So I would come home, work on the cars, buy and sell the cars, and sleep for about 6-7 hours, go back into night crew. I did that for about 6 months.
Peter Klutt built a massive documented operation on a 20-acre facility in Halton Hills, moving rare collector cars like a Ferrari 275 GTB4 valued north of $3 million by the Hagerty Price guide. His reputation rested entirely on that physical scale, not on reality television metrics. Yet when Dennis Collins clashed with him on national television, the fallout went far beyond typical reality show drama. If the comment was only a quick jab, why did it land like a direct threat to the entire business? What exactly was said? And why did it matter so much? The name behind the title. To understand the clash between these two public figures, you have to look past the calculated drama of reality television and look at what stood on the ground first. Peter Klutt did not start out as a personality looking for a camera crew. He built legendary motor car company from the ground up, establishing a massive footprint as the founder and owner of a prominent dealership and restoration facility. When you looked at the physical infrastructure, the sheer volume of the operation became clear. He ran a 20-acre shop in Halton Hills, Ontario, which served as the operational hub for a very specific two-pronged business model. His team did not just rotate through quick mechanical flips for entertainment value. According to a detailed interview published by Hagerty Media on February 28, 2019, the facility restored about a dozen high-end classics each year, while simultaneously selling hundreds of other collector vehicles more broadly. The scale of this footprint was corroborated in a March 2022 broadcast by Motorama Shop Tours, which documented the precise location and depth of the legendary motorcar company facility in Halton Hills. That specific combination of restoration and sales changed the stakes entirely. In the collector car market, a business that handles both high-end restoration and large-scale sales relies completely on an unblemished reputation. If a shop only sold cars, a rumor might hurt their inventory flow. If they only restored cars, a rumor might cause a few clients to hesitate. But when a single founder controlled both sides of the coin, any public challenge to their credibility threatened two major revenue streams at the exact same moment. A public accusation against someone with this level of market presence carried a different weight than ordinary reality television banter. On a typical car build show, viewers expected hosts to trade insults about timelines or budget overruns because those arguments made for good television. But when the target of a comment was a man who moved hundreds of investments per year, the banter stopped sounding like a script. If your whole business depends on trust, what happens when that trust gets questioned in public? The reality was that a public swipe at Klutt was never just about ego, because his business was already large enough for one remark to affect real money. A developer or a collector who dropped 6 figures on a vehicle needed to know that the restoration work matched the documentation. When an accusation hinted that the craftsmanship was compromised, it struck at the core value of the inventory sitting on those 20 acres. That reputation would matter even more once you see the cars attached to his name. Because the next piece of evidence is not about personality at all. It is about what he put on the auction block. If a man consigns 13 cars, including a Ferrari valued north of $3 million, does he look like someone easy to dismiss on television? The auction receipts. He did not look like someone easy to dismiss because the international market had already measured his inventory in millions. When a dealer stepped onto the premier global auction stages, the valuation of their inventory provided an objective baseline for their standing in the industry. The reality of Peter Klutt's operation became undeniable through the specific data points recorded in the high-stakes auction ecosystem. The scope of this market presence was explicitly detailed in a report published by the ClassicCars.com journal on June 18, 2015. The documentation revealed that Klutt consigned a massive 13-car collection to the prestigious Gooding & Company Monterey sale. This was not a random assortment of entry-level classics. The consignment featured incredibly rare machinery, anchored by a highly coveted, unrestored 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4. To put that specific vehicle into perspective, the Hagerty Price Guide positioned the value of a 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4 well north of $3 million. The alignment with an auction house of this caliber further validated the standing of legendary motorcar company. David Gooding, the president of Gooding and Company, specifically highlighted the significance of the collection in the official auction release, acknowledging the exceptional quality of the vehicles Klutt brought to the market. The high-stakes event took place over the weekend of August 15th and 16th, positioning Klutt's inventory as a focal point of the entire Monterey auction week. Operating at this level required an entirely different tier of business discipline than standard automotive retailing. In the elite auction room, reputation was not built on charisma or televised showmanship. It was built entirely on exact provenance, verified originality, and absolute market confidence. Every single car consigned by a prominent dealer underwent intense scrutiny by historians, surveyors, and sophisticated buyers who parsed every weld, serial number, and paint layer. The people most qualified to judge Klutt's credibility had already entrusted him with multi-million-dollar cars. When a consignment included an unrestored Ferrari worth millions, the value rested explicitly on the asset being exactly what the dealer claimed it to be. This environment explains why the public dynamics between major automotive personalities carried such immense weight. Klutt was not operating as a hobbyist flipping cars out of a residential garage. He was a high-tier market player whose name appeared on titles and consignment contracts alongside global business leaders. If a collector trusts you with a Ferrari worth more than $3 million, how much damage can one public accusation do? The vulnerability was structural. In a market where a single mismatched serial number or a hidden patch of body filler could erase hundreds of thousands of dollars in value, trust was the ultimate currency. A dealer could spend decades building the relationships necessary to secure a 13-car consignment for Monterey. Yet that entire framework could be disrupted if the public began to question their foundational integrity. Now the story shifts from market credibility to the exact moment of impact, because the next chapter is where the vague feud narrative stops and the disputed broadcast claim starts. One line on television changed the whole tone, but what exactly was the line? And was it a spontaneous dig or something sharper? The line on air. The tension between these two high-profile collector mentalities reached its peak not through a private legal dispute, but through a single sentence delivered during a television broadcast. The narrative surrounding Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins had circulated in collector circles for months, fueled primarily by online analysis videos. To understand the exact allegation under scrutiny, one had to look at a specific competitor upload titled, "Peter Klutt Finally Opens Up About Dennis Collins." According to that competitor video, which featured a runtime of 27 minutes and 54 seconds, the catalyst for the entire rift occurred during a live appraisal segment on national television. The upload claimed that while the two men were presenting a classic vehicle on camera, Collins directed a highly specific phrase toward Klutt, stating that some people have a habit of polishing rust. It is critical to state clearly that this exchange remained an unverified claim. A thorough review of primary broadcast logs and network transcripts failed to yield independent confirmation of this exact dialogue. Consequently, researchers remained completely unable to definitively verify if the network edited the sequence before public transmission. However, because this specific quote became the foundation for the public perception of the feud, analyzing the implications of that exact phrase revealed why the collector community reacted so strongly. In the high-end automotive investment space, a public challenge to a vehicle's authenticity carried devastating commercial weight. When a dealer brought a car to a live appraisal segment on national television, they were putting their brand's quality control on display. Originality, documented provenance, and structural integrity dictated millions of dollars in asset valuation. By introducing the phrase "polishing rust" into a public conversation, the allegation went far beyond typical reality television banter about build times or styling choices. It directly implied that a restoration shop was intentionally concealing structural degradation beneath a cosmetic layer of filler and paint. A single public sentence can threaten a collector's credibility because provenance is part of the product. In this market, buyers did not just purchase physical metal, they purchased the documented truth of how that metal was preserved and restored. If a high-net-worth individual suspected that a prominent shop hid structural flaws beneath a glossy exterior, the premium value of that shop's entire inventory could drop instantly. In a market where originality can change the price by thousands or millions, why would anyone throw that kind of doubt into the open? The structural damage of such an accusation was rooted entirely in the psychology of the high-end collector market. Unlike entry-level consumer vehicles, investment-grade classics were bought and sold on absolute confidence. The moment a prominent figure publicly questioned the work of a peer, they introduced an unquantifiable risk to any pending transactions involving that peer's inventory. Even if the allegation was entirely unconfirmed by primary network footage, the mere circulation of the rumor forced a business like Legendary Motorcar Company to defend its craftsmanship against an invisible standard of doubt. But the line itself was only the surface damage. The bigger question is, what happens when a collector with a public reputation for trust has that trust attacked in front of an audience that buys on confidence? The next part is where the fallout becomes measurable, not emotional. What changed after the broadcast? What trust costs? The immediate consequence of a televised dispute did not register in network ratings, but in the operational flow of high-value asset trading. When a business traded exclusively in investment-grade history, a challenge to its integrity did not just affect public image, it directly threatened the financial foundation of the company. In the collector car market, reputation functioned as actual financial infrastructure, not just vanity. To understand why a public credibility hit carried such volatile consequences, one had to look at the structural reality of Legendary Motorcar Company. According to the verified business profile published by Hagerty Media on February 28, 2019, the company maintained an intense operational rhythm, executing about a dozen high-tier restorations annually while selling hundreds of collector cars more broadly. Moving hundreds of vehicles each year meant the company operated constantly within a network of high-net-worth buyers, corporate collectors, and international auction houses. In this specific tier of the market, transactions routinely depended on extensive documentation, where the slightest discrepancy could halt a deal instantly. This hypersensitive business environment explained why the narrative presented in the competitor video carried such high stakes. The upload claimed that the fallout from the broadcast reached the daily operations at the 20-acre facility, asserting that a few promising deals were suddenly put on hold and that longtime clients began requesting more detailed provenance checks. It is critical to label these assertions clearly as uncorroborated claims rather than settled facts, as no internal business records or primary financial data were provided to verify that any specific client backed out of a purchase. Furthermore, the media production lacked formal corporate statements from either dealership involved. However, the video's narrative itself explicitly emphasized that no wrongdoing was ever proven. Despite the complete absence of verified misconduct, the mechanism of how doubt spreads in this industry remained an authentic business risk. When a prominent collector car figure planted a seed of suspicion, the damage occurred through the immediate inflation of transaction friction. If a shop's name depends on documentation, how fast does doubt spread once someone plants it publicly? In a standard automotive transaction, a buyer looked at the odometer and the body lines. In a multi-$100,000 collector acquisition, the buyer looked at the restoration logs, the historical ownership chain, and the personal credibility of the dealer standing behind the asset. The moment a public remark hinted at compromised standards, it triggered an immediate wave of defensive behavior from buyers. Even the most loyal collectors felt compelled to execute deeper, more redundant provenance checks, simply to protect their own investments. This dynamic showed that the true cost of public doubt was not necessarily a sudden drop in inventory value, but a severe slowdown in operational velocity. A high-end restoration facility relied on a steady flow of capital to fund multi-year projects and maintain massive physical facilities. If clients delayed payments or paused incoming projects out of caution, the administrative overhead remained constant while the revenue pipeline narrowed. The competitor videos claim that deals stalled reflected the exact vulnerability every major dealer faced. The market bought on confidence, and confidence was notoriously fragile. That is the business side, but the final layer is personal. Whether this was a blunt comment, a staged moment, or a real fracture between two people who already knew the cost of public image. The next chapter is where the rivalry stops being about one sentence and becomes about what the sentence reveals about the relationship itself. So, was this a one-off clash or a sign of something deeper? What the feud actually reveals. The true significance of the tension between Peter Klutt and Dennis Collins did not lie in the realm of internet celebrity gossip or reality television ratings. Instead, the situation exposed a profound structural reality about the collector car market. The extreme vulnerability of high-value commercial identities to unverified public narratives. When you stripped away the speculative commentary circulating on social media, the entire feud revealed a high-stakes collision between public reputation and collector market trust. The weight of this dispute only made sense when you stacked it against the verified physical reality of what Klutt constructed over 3 decades. His standing was never a product of television trickery. It was anchored by a massive 20-acre shop in Halton Hills, Ontario, where his team executed about a dozen meticulous restorations annually while managing hundreds of vehicle sales more broadly. This was an operation built on physical infrastructure and tangible assets, not digital metrics or scripted drama. The market validated this scale long before any televised clash occurred. The definitive proof stood in the historical record of the 13-car Monterey consignment that Klutt delivered to Gooding and Company. That single consignment featured an unrestored 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB4 valued well north of $3 million by the Hagerty Price Guide, representing the kind of top-tier asset density that only a highly trusted market player could command. Against this backdrop of immense commercial value, the introduction of a single derogatory phrase transformed from minor entertainment into a direct assault on financial infrastructure. The competitor video, uploaded under the title "Peter Klutt Finally Opens Up About Dennis Collins," claimed that the entire rift ignited when Collins stated on air that some people have a habit of polishing rust. In the high-end collector car universe, that specific phrase was the ultimate insult. It did not merely suggest a difference of opinion on styling or price, it directly attacked the craftsmanship, honesty, and transparency of the restoration process itself. Yet, as you parsed this narrative, an essential caveat emerged that demanded absolute clarity. No primary evidence in the competitor video proved the allegation independently. The upload relied entirely on retrospective narration and unverified clips, lacking a definitive, unedited, primary broadcast transcript or a confirmed network record of the live appraisal segment. In the eyes of an objective investigator, the exchange remained an unconfirmed claim rather than a settled historical fact. However, the lack of primary confirmation did not diminish the structural lesson of the feud. In fact, it amplified it. The reality that an unverified rumor could stir such intense debate within the industry proved that in the collector car space, a public reputation was incredibly sensitive to external pressure. The feud mattered because it targeted something real, a measurable business reputation backed by documented cars and documented sales. This structural reality highlighted how easily unconfirmed digital content disrupted established marketplace dynamics. If one public line can shake a trusted name, what does that tell you about how fragile reputation is in collector cars? It showed that the ultimate currency of the collector market was not the rarity of the steel or the horsepower of the engine, but the absolute certainty of the documentation. A dealer could build a 20-acre facility and secure multi-million-dollar consignments for Monterey. Yet their entire operational framework remained deeply dependent on collective confidence. The moment an accusation introduced the idea that a builder might be concealing structural flaws beneath a cosmetic finish, It forced the entire market to reevaluate the risk associated with that builder's name. This environment explained why the public dynamics between major automotive figures carried such immense commercial consequences. When two prominent personalities operated in the same media space, their words did not exist in a vacuum. A spontaneous dig or a calculated critique could instantly alter the perceived risk profile of a business, causing sophisticated buyers to execute redundant checks or pause pending acquisitions entirely out of caution. The investigation into why Peter Klutt finally opened up about Dennis Collins proved that a public attack only matters when the target has something real to lose. Klutt's 20-acre facility, his sales of hundreds of cars, and that Ferrari 275 GTB4 worth north of $3 million were all real-world assets. Did the broadcast line cross a line? Leave a comment below with the moment you think changed their relationship.